guys, it's Leslie Wise, and this is After the Anchor podcast. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in and hear what we have to say. My guest today is Marika Tarian, and I found her on social media, and unbeknownst to myself, I had actually started following her online boutique, Blossom in Love, months before I came across her other professional profile. Marika, it's called Alive in Her Body. And when I found this information about system regulation and a 30-day challenge, I was like, sign me up. I need to know more about this. If you're in the business of getting healthy, of changing your life, this is an episode that you should tune into because Marika has a wealth of knowledge from childhood through to today. She's lived quite a life. So I just want to give credit here to Marika. Go ahead and tell us some about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Marika. I'm a full-time artist. I'm a flower preservation artist. I turn flowers into jewelry and purses and lamps and anything else you can think of. I've been doing that for about 5-6 years now. It was my COVID hobby. I'm lucky enough to turn it into a full-time business. And for the last year, I've also dived in deeper into like nervous system regulation. I got EFT tapping certified as like one of my favorite tools and started sharing my story about stopping smoking weed is what led us today.
Yes, exactly. So I'm excited to share this episode with y'all, and we'll just get into the questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right, Marika, thank you so much for stopping in and taking the time out of your day to answer some of these questions for my audience. I know your perspective is really going to help a lot of people. Let's start off at the beginning, your childhood, where it all starts. We know that so much of our internal system is built in childhood. And so let's just start off there. When you think about who you were growing up, what kind of child was Marika?
I was always on the quiet side, and I always had just one best friend, and usually one of my neighbors was my best friend growing up. And I just remember, from the time that I can remember, I was always going to gymnastics from 3 years old. That was kind of my thing that I always used to go and do. And so if I wasn't at gymnastics or at school, I was at my neighbor's house. She was my best friend, and we were just doing weird stuff together. You know what I mean? And like we lived next to a cemetery growing up, so we were always just like playing in the cemetery and just like doing fun stuff together. And yeah, I feel like I said, I was on the quiet side. I was a little skater kid at the skate park on my skateboard, just doing random things. And I wasn't like a normal skater girl. I was doing like handstands on my skateboard because I was a gymnast. I was just having a grand old time, hanging out on the trampoline. And I would definitely say that like I was on the artsy, crafty side. I was always the one making cards for people growing up. I loved to make my gifts for people. I did a lot of just like nature walking with my mom. I grew up with just my mom in New Hampshire, and she would always take me on adventures, just going out into nature, going for a walk, going for a hike, going to the beach. I always used to collect shells on the beach, just always immersed in nature and very like grounded as a kid.
I can see that. I can definitely see because you have a very grounded energy. Of course, everybody can have their, wild moments, and that's just part of being human. Did you ever find yourself, you were in sports, so sometimes there's pressure from sports, and you started young, so probably around 3, did you feel much pressure about it? About what time was that?
I don't really remember that young, but I would say probably maybe first or second grade is when I started actually competing for gymnastics. By the time I was in middle school, I was like, okay, this is a real competition sport. I take this very seriously. Practices 3 to 4 times a week. They're, 4-hour-long practices. This is my life. This is what I do outside of school, almost every single day. If I wasn't at practice, I was on my trampoline doing flips for hours, And so I would say middle school is when it started to get really serious for me. And I hundreds of medals and trophies from my childhood. I was just always really good at it. And I loved the sport, like I loved going to practice, but you also get to a point, that sport specifically, there's a lot of fear involved because you're doing such hard skills once you get to certain levels. And I did around like 7th or 8th grade get to that mental block of like, wow, I'm doing really hard skills now. And I started to get really fearful going to practice.
So you do have memory of having anxiousness.
Oh, totally.
Did you know it was anxiousness?
I don't think I ever used the word anxiety as a kid growing up. I was very quiet. I never like talked about how I felt growing up. And I never wanted to like put burden on my mom specifically because I knew there was so much stress growing up in a single parent household. And so I just kept a lot of my feelings to myself, which is why it took so long for me to actually make the decision to quit, to like do what was right for my body at the time. Because I never wanted to like make it harder for anybody else, So I just kept my feelings to myself a lot of the time.
So that's how you managed to navigate those feelings when you were younger.
Yeah.
You just kind of just held it into yourself and just pushed it down. I guess it is a lot easier actually. When I think back now saying it, it was so like second nature. You wouldn't have even thought that it was affecting you.
Yeah.
In hindsight now, I look back and it was just like par for the course, just shove it down.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to shove it down and then it's done and they don't have to worry about it.
Well, in gymnastics, you're also just taught to walk it off, right? Like you can feel it, but walk it off. You have to do it anyways. So I think that was kind of my mentality for most of the time is like you do it scared, you do it anyways, and it doesn't really matter how you feel. You just have to get it done. And so I did override a lot of my emotions just to make sure I was doing it perfectly like I was supposed to.
And so a typical childhood day for you in gymnastics, you just had your normal schedule, just wake up, go to school, or did you have before school practices?
No, I wasn't anything like super disciplined like that. Wake up, go to school. My mom also worked at a school for most of my life, so we were on the same schedule. And I actually walked to school most of the time. I lived close enough to school that I didn't have like a bus route that I took. So yeah, walking to and from school. And then practice started at like 5 o'clock. So I was at practice from 5 to 9 p.m.
You had a nice packed schedule.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. When you were in training and competitions, was it more of a physical fear, like that kind of physical fear holding you back or?
I pushed through the fear so easily, but I would get so scared that I would almost pee my pants, like before every competition. That was like, I would have to try so hard not to pee my pants. I was so nervous before competing.
Has that ever transpired into like adult life where you go like, oh no?
Not really.
Thank goodness. That's not a muscle memory. I was like, is that one of those muscle memory things? Like it trauma lives in the body.
I do try my best not to pee my pants on a regular basis.
Like I've been, nervous stomach. Sometimes
no,
like,
but
I get nervous
I think
stomach.
you're on the right track with like, I think a lot of my fear. So when I was about like 15 years old is when like IBS set in for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that stored fear is, stored in my stomach. And a lot of those nerves of like feeling nauseous and like wanting to pee my pants before going on to perform probably is related to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that. Yeah, so but gymnastics, there is one good part about being able to take on a lot of that pressure.
Totally.
Because it really builds character in who you are. So it's not necessarily the pressure of, a sport or a competition is a bad thing at all.
No.
It builds character. It's kind of like whenever we add it with the outside forces, it's like my son said, variables. He's in college, and so he's really into this, and he's like, everything changes. So, if you'd had a very different home life,
yeah,
and competition might have been different, so that's really interesting.
I think that gymnastics teaches you a lot of discipline, a lot of strength, and character in general and pushing through. I think that there is a certain amount of fear that you do need to push through in life to be successful and to have big dreams. Like when you're a gymnast, it's not usually everybody just wants to go to the Olympics. Like there is no mediocre dream in gymnastics because you can go to collegiate gymnastics, but there's no like professional gymnastics. It's the Olympics. That's the one dream. So you're shooting for the stars when you're a gymnast. There is no in between that you land on. So excellence is what you strive for every single day, and I think that's a beautiful thing to strive for. But I also think that you need to learn to listen to your body, and I definitely push back the signs that my body was giving me and the pain that it was giving me a little bit too much.
That's kind of where this next question just went into. And as you got older, did that way of pushing through show up in other areas of your life? And clearly, positive and in a negative, like not listening to yourself or pushing through when you should have listened to yourself.
Yeah, I think that, this listening to your intuition in general, it's not just gymnastics that strayed me away from that. There's so many other factors that play into learning to trust your intuition and experiences that you have in life. But I definitely would say that it teaches you a lot about yourself, and it teaches you to be the best version of yourself every single day. And I'm so grateful to have that in my life. I don't regret any second of the gymnastics career that I have and what it taught me and the person that it made me into today. I think that if I hadn't have had that kind of lifestyle growing up, the intense training, I wouldn't have been able to become the person I am today with successful business and big dreams. It really teaches you to think bigger and to expand what you think you're capable of. So
at what point did that kind of start to settle down with your gymnastics? Was there any sort of turning point that...
Going into high school, I broke my ankle twice in 1 year on the same skill, and they were going to make me do it for a third time. I had to learn the skill to compete again. There was no in between. I couldn't just not do this skill or this event. I had to do it. And so I had to make a decision. Do I potentially hurt myself for a third time, or do I take a step back and reevaluate life? And that's when I was going into my freshman year of high school. And coincidentally, I started that year, and it was the first year that my school had a volleyball program. And I was like, oh, a new sport, let's try something new. I made varsity my first year because I was so athletic already. And it felt like a natural transition for me where, although I was scared to quit, I also was kind of gifted with this opportunity to start a team. And being on varsity, I was so honored to feel like I was valued on a team right out the gate. So it all worked out.
I think it's funny how one chapter closed and then another chapter opened just
Always.
Fluidly.
But I couldn't have predicted that. I didn't know volleyball existed when I quit,
How long did you play volleyball for?
All of high school, so the 4 years of high school, and then I stopped when I went into college, focused more on academics than I did sports.
Yeah. And so since you didn't go into the gymnast professional, you went off to college. And tell me a little bit about that, because it's you're very fascinating in your education.
So I have a degree in biomedical science, and then I ended up going for another year for grad school, essentially for radiation therapy for cancer patients. And I thought that I wanted to be in the medical industry. And, sometimes you just get into things and they don't work out as planned. And I got into my clinicals for radiation therapy. You're in the basement of a hospital for 10 hours a day. And my first day of clinical, I actually got in trouble for talking too much. They told me that I wasn't allowed to speak anymore unless I was asking a question about directly what I was doing. And I wasn't even talking about like fun stuff not related. I was asking them like why they like their job, what their favorite part of it was, like things that I thought was related to me starting a career.
Yeah.
And apparently that was just not okay. And so I had to be silent for the next 6 months unless I was directly asking a question about what we were doing. And I was miserable. I did not want to be there. I was like, this is not the place for me. I can't have any personality. I can't what am I doing here if I can't even speak while I'm around people, and so Wednesday afternoon, like a year into my 2-year certification, I just walked into my advisor's office and I was like, I'm done. I just don't think this is for me. And so 5 years of school, I walked out. And again, that week, I was offered the opportunity to start managing the restaurant that I was working at, serving and bartending at. And it was, again, another transition period that I didn't really see coming, but kind of worked out timing wise to say, okay, here's another opportunity for you. So you don't feel like you're just like wasting your life away right now.
How did you navigate school? I mean, so that's again, there's a lot to navigate. You literally stopped gymnastics when you weren't really wanting to. It was just something you had to do for yourself. So you took control there and you navigated into this next beautiful journey of volleyball. And then you go into college and you're like finishing it and you're at the finish line and you go, this is not serving me. This is not serving my body. This is not serving my future. This is not serving my purpose. I am not even who I like went in as. And you stopped it. Talk about like, I've heard people say, well, when the ball gets rolling down the hill, you just got to let it. And I am one of those that's like, no, I'll stop in front of it. And there'll be some destruction, but I'm at least going to slow it down. Like, I don't mind changing course.
Yeah.
And you do that. You did that.
Yeah, I think that in the moment, you don't really make decisions because you know what the future is going to hold. You just make it because it's what feels right in the moment. But it all comes back around. Like, I never thought that my degree would come back into play. I never thought that I would go back into healthcare in any sort of way. But here I am, 10 plus years later, and it is coming back into play in my life right now. And I'm so grateful that I have all of that knowledge. And although I went down a very messy path to come back to it, I had to find my own way in what made sense for me, and traditional medicine and hospitals and insurance and all of this stuff that just doesn't make sense to me. I just couldn't be in that world. And so I had to find a way to integrate that into my life. And nothing you do goes to waste. It all plays a purpose in your life. Like, God doesn't put something in your path if you're not supposed to do it. So I know I was meant to learn that stuff. I just needed to use it in a way that benefited my life purpose, not what I thought looked good at the time.
I agree. There's a lot of little faking it's that I've done, like building a website of just, 20 years ago and thinking, well, that was junk. And now I look back on it and I was like, gosh, I learned so much building that thing, or, just stepping out of your comfort zone. So you went into restaurant.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of pressure. A lot of these things are you like a high pressure. You like to stay elevated.
That's what gymnastics does to you. There is no low pressure situation.
No, you're not content with. So that must be very difficult to chill. Like you got to to chill out when you like to achieve high. So did you drink? Were you a drinker? Did you recreationally? What?
I've never really been a drinker really, but I definitely fell into like festivals and having a little bit of fun at a festival.
Yeah.
And I moved out to Vegas in, what was that, 2018, and just said, you know what, I'm in hospitality. I'm a pretty girl. What am I supposed to do with my life right now?
Yeah.
And so I picked up and I moved to Vegas. What better place to be a pretty girl in hospitality? And I learned some pretty hard lessons, like that was not an easy transition for me. I went through some pretty massive experiences my first year living here that really transformed my view of life and myself and people and what people are capable of. And so I had a lot of really hard learning experiences, but I never wanted to quit. I never wanted to give up. I didn't want to move back home and say I failed. And so I powered through it like I always have in my life. And like you said, like I like to be a high achiever. I did my best to do that throughout those years, but I was just trying to find myself. Like I had no clue who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. Hospitality made you money in the short term, but like long term, I didn't want to be a waitress or cocktail server the rest of my life. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do from here? And naturally I was like, okay, well, we'll go into sales next. I can talk to people, and what can I sell in Las Vegas? So I got into timeshare sales, and that's where I was when COVID happened. And that's kind of where my entire life changed into the person that I am today. But I had to learn a little bit of, like, again, high achieving in sales. Like, I wanted to be the best person that I could. And I got into solar sales a little bit. I was always one of the top females in my office, trying to be the best person I could. But yeah, I learned a lot of really hard lessons along the way, trying to navigate finding myself.
And now you talk about before COVID, and so that's when you were working manager at a restaurant. Tell me a little bit about that part of your life. What did you do for fun? What were you doing? What were you up to?
I don't think I really did anything with purpose. I think I worked a lot. I went to bars with my friends. I went to festivals. There wasn't really anything productive outside of just making some money every day, to get
Yeah.
by to the next day. I don't think I really ever had too many like passions necessarily. I was not doing art then. I wasn't a reader. I mean, I went hiking sometimes. I love to go on adventures, but like I didn't really have anything that I was super passionate about. I was like very lost in life during this transition. I had no clue who I was, what I liked, who I wanted to be, and I was just like trying to figure it out one day at a time, Mostly just being social and trying to fit in was what I was doing.
You say that you went through some difficult times
Yeah.
during that time. Do you want to elaborate on anything in particular? What kind of obstacles were you overcoming? And this was how old were you?
So I was 27
27.
when I moved to Vegas, I believe. 26? Yeah. So I moved here in 2018. 4 months into living here was the shooting on the Strip, October 1st. And I was sitting out front of Mandalay Bay watching the glass fall from the window that he was shooting out of. And that was like the first major experience that I had where I experienced like massive trauma in my life, like massive PTSD. And I was just hanging out in my house, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to decorate this new apartment that I've moved into. I'm 4 months into living in Vegas, and let's go get some fabric to sew some pillows. That's what I was doing. And I went to Walmart to buy some fabric, and I ended up meeting a man at Walmart. This is a month after the shooting, and he asked me out on a date. And I thought, how harmless could one date be? Took his number, ended up getting 2 drinks with him that night, and he turned out to be the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life and stalked me for about 6 months. And it was, I've never experienced fear like that in my life before. And so
How did it go from 2 cocktails to fearing for your life stalker situation?
I told him 2 details about my life, where I worked and where I went to the gym. And he haunted me with those 2 details. He had my number, but although I blocked his number, he was just a psychopath and had an app on his phone that he could change his number to whatever he wanted so he could continue to contact me. And so no matter how many times I blocked him, he was still able to get in contact with me. He knew where I worked. He somehow, like, it was always when I was working, he knew I was there. And he would send me death threats. He made bomb threats to my gym. He would threaten to shoot my trainer at the gym. Yeah, from 2 details of my life, where I worked, where I went to the gym. And so I
I'm
never
so
thought
sorry.
that those would be details that would harm me in my life. You know what I mean? Those are such casual details to share with somebody. And yeah, they turned out to be like the biggest mistake I could have shared.
Why would what he just got enraged?
Yeah, it was race driven. He knew that I had a black trainer at my gym, and something set off in his brain. He turned into this new human being. I saw the change in his eyes as soon as he asked me, "Is he black?" And I,
That's
me thinking, like,
terrifying.
he told me he went to the same gym as me. He was like, "Oh, I go to that gym. What location do you go to?" He's like, "I probably know your trainer. What's his name?" He made it seem like such casual. conversation, you know? And so I was answering the questions, and then it just set a trigger off in his mind, and he was screaming at me, telling me I was white trash and I was getting taken advantage of, how I was so disgusting for letting him do that to me. And I hadn't even trained with this man yet. It was like my first training session the next day with him. And yeah, it just set him off. And
So what happened to this guy? How'd you handle this?
So this man, this is really hard to explain because he had a junior on his name, but the warrant that they put out for his arrest somehow did not have the same name as his ID. And so when they were trying to find him, because of how many felony charges were against him, the FBI were literally involved in this case. And they found out that it wasn't just me that he had done this to. There were 10 other women from New York to San Diego and everywhere in between. And because of the severity of the bomb threats and everything else that he did, it opened up this federal case. And they had actually pulled him over 4 times in the 6 months. But because the warrant didn't have the correct name on it to his ID, they never arrested him. And so they finally arrested him. I go to grand jury to testify against him, and 22 felony charges. And they gave him bail. He bailed himself out, and he's never been found.
What? Did you ever hear any of the stories of the other women?
No, I did not get to hear any of that. I kind of went in, testified, and left, and that was just that.
And did he have the same kind of react? Oh, you wouldn't have known.
Same trigger for all the other women.
So he was triggered.
It was all semi-race related, mostly stories he made up in his mind about somebody in the situation that wasn't actually in the situation. Strangulation charges, pornography charges. Like, I got off easy compared to some of these women.
And he's
never been found
out there.
Yeah.
Wow. How do you cope with that? Okay, so you're not a drinker. I mean, do you just
yeah, so I definitely
raw
sank
dog
in
in life, like just
no,
like,
seriously.
I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, that would drive you to drink. That
I mean, I was doing a lot of
like,
psychedelics at the time. You know what I mean? I was going to raves. I was definitely escaping my body in general.
Okay. So you were coping.
And I never sought out a therapist during this entire situation, which is funny because my mom's a guidance counselor. Like, she kind of does this for a living. So I kind of always just go to my mom when I need to talk about something. I did smoke weed a lot of the time. It was always casual, once or twice a day, go to sleep kind of thing. I never saw it as like an addiction or anything. I always because I didn't drink, I was like, oh, this is just like my one thing, Yeah. I didn't even think of it as escaping, but I definitely now see it as like that was how I coped with getting through all of this. And it wasn't until COVID that any of those emotions really came crashing down on me because I was powering through all of this. I didn't see myself as a victim. I just kept pushing through. I changed my number. I moved. I didn't go to the same gym anymore. I got a new job. I changed my entire life.
You fixed it, but you didn't.
I did my best to just escape and to move on from it. I never really healed from it. And so when COVID happened and I was just stuck in my house, I actually moved cross country back home to Boston for a year because I lost my job. The world seemed like it was ending. And something about that move triggered every emotion in me. And I never really had panic attacks or anxiety attacks in my life. I was having daily panic attacks, waking up with panic attacks in COVID. And
Can you describe what a panic attack might feel like for someone who... A lot of my audience, and I know this because I get messages in my inbox and even just past acquaintances and friends that follow me now, and they'll talk to me about this. And even I didn't realize that I was having panic attacks or anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
I just thought this is how life has always been. And this is just my identity. And then you talk to other people and they're like, I've never experienced that in my life. What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I like to get shit-faced at night and like drink a bottle of wine because, it's too much. But unless you've heard it from someone. So my
I think this is a great
are going to be different from yours. So, yeah.
So when they first started, they started on my road trip back home. And I was like hyperventilating. I could not breathe when a panic attack would set in. I would lose feeling in my hands and my lips. They would go tingly. I couldn't I would get like claw hands almost, like I couldn't use my hands anymore. And I had zero appetite. I couldn't keep food down. I couldn't keep water down. I actually had to go to the hospital like 3 or 4 days into the road trip because I couldn't even drink water. I was like so overwhelmed with panic in my body. And so I got home to Boston, and that was the first time I ever had to take like medication for anxiety because I was waking up dry heaving every single morning from anxiety in my body. Just like that never ending pit in the bottom of your stomach that you're just so nauseous all day. And that also led to bad eating habits because nothing sounded good to eat. All you wanted to eat was bland or pizza or pasta, something that just like felt easy to eat. And so I was super unhealthy for that year, but that was the first year that I was like, I think I need to like find a therapist. And so my friend Paige, I'm so grateful to her. She's like one of my spirit guide friends, somebody
Where'd you meet Paige?
Festivals actually. But her and her husband, I just look up to them more than anybody in my life. And she introduced me to this therapist who did EFT tapping. And that was the first time I feel anxiety. It's not like a panic in my brain. Like my thoughts aren't running and racing. It's this like deep dread in my body, like this feeling of like wanting to tear my skin off and just get out of my body and just almost like dissociate, And so she introduced me to EFT tapping, and that was the first time in probably 6 months that I got hunger cues back. And after my first session with her, she was like, "How do you feel?" And I looked at her, I started crying. I was like, "I feel hungry again." And that was my first time that I was like, wow, talk therapy isn't everything that helps. And for people who feel anxiety so physically, you need that somatic, that extra bit to move that energy out of your body. And so from that point on, EFT tapping has been like my lifesaver when it comes to regulating my body back to feeling safe again, feeling safe to hold love, happiness, wealth, all of those things that when you're in fight or flight that you can't hold. And so, yeah, it's kind of been my saving grace.
I'm really excited to learn more about your EFT, which we talked about earlier today. And yeah, it's something that I think I would benefit from greatly, greatly. Just hearing you talk about it makes me emotional. And I'm like, I can't, like, we can't break again and pause again. But yeah, it's everything you say is what I feel. And this is why I do the podcast. This is why I find the guests like you who you have a way of explaining the way that a lot of us feel, but we don't have the words because we're just still trying to survive it.
Yeah.
We're like in that part, that the dry heaving, the waking, like the first thought is something that is really just difficult, but you don't really understand why because it's not something that you even have control over.
Yeah.
But it's like your brain says, this is number one. And it's like, but yeah, so I'm just super excited to hear more about that. So on this, you said that you used to use marijuana occasionally. Did you find that it ever became a routine?
Yeah. So in this period of life, all you want to do is escape those symptoms. You want to not feel nauseous. You want to feel calm in your body. And smoking was the thing that did that for me for many years. And so not only did it become like a daily thing, it was like multiple times a day that I just needed to calm the sensations in my body. And so it definitely became my best friend, It was the one thing that I felt safe with. It built community. Community is one of the saving graces when you're in this place in life, And the cannabis community specifically was so healing to me during this phase of my life. And I'm so grateful for all of the years it did help me. But there comes a time when you can't cover it up anymore and you can't keep pushing it down and just like covering the symptoms. And I think that cannabis is so intelligent as much as it heals your body, it also tells you when it's time to let go. And I got to a point with it last year where my body was like, you need to let go of this. It is time. You've done the work. You are not this person anymore, and you need to step through it. And so this past year was the first time that I was like, I'm not this woman anymore. I'm not this girl who needs to cover up these symptoms anymore. And I had to let go of that identity of the person who felt included in that community and loved the plant so much and felt like it was part of her identity, to step into the next version of myself who finally didn't need it to survive anymore. So I'm grateful for all of those years, but I also now, on the other side of it, recognize what it did for me in that phase of life, and I'm okay with letting go of that now.
I really like when you said stepping through, like I could see the visual, like of just going, okay, there was nothing wrong with it while it was serving me, because it did serve me. It's just like taking prescriptions. There's nothing wrong with doing what you need to do for your body, because you're the only one that's experiencing it. Nobody else is. But there is a point in time where you do start to go, okay, well, I've worked through this and I've worked through that. This still sucks really bad, but I've made it through these two really big, hard things. So this one really doesn't suck that bad. And maybe it's time to just let it suck sober with no
Everything is
numbing.
hard. You have to choose your hard, right?
You do. I say that a lot. I say that a lot in my stories I talk about. And I'm like, living in the hard is really what makes you feel like a badass at the end, because then when things do happen, you're just like, that's nothing,
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that stuff with us. So when you did start to notice, you said, you're ready to step away. It wasn't really serving you the same. Were there any other signs that you could say, okay, well, maybe I wasn't getting high? A lot of people like to say my tolerance. My tolerance was up. And I, as a user myself, I have a medical prescription in Texas, and after talking to my therapist about it, it's not really that I've grown a tolerance to it. It's that I have a different baseline than I used to. So I feel dysfunctional and dysregulated, but I'm actually much more supported than I was. And I don't think the weed is working the same.
Yeah, I think that there's so many aspects to answer this. I'll answer it for my experience, because again, everybody's body is different. My chemistry is different than your chemistry. It's different to a man's body chemistry. It's all different, right? So in my experience, I noticed that I was the unhealthiest that I had ever been last year. I was chronically exhausted, and I think there comes a point in your healing journey. I became a full-time artist 5 years ago, and I'm so grateful for that, because it allowed me to stay home, live a very slow lifestyle, and do everything that I needed to really focus on myself for the first time and not like pour my energy into somebody else. And it's the most healing thing that I ever did for myself, was becoming a full-time artist. But during this time, I was also still smoking every single day. And don't get me wrong, you can still function as a human being and smoke every day. I built a 6-figure business smoking every day, But my body was the sickest it ever had been, chronically exhausted. I was nauseous in the mornings, and I would smoke to get rid of the nausea still, and all of these symptoms that I had in my body. And I finally was like, I need to get curious about what's happening in my body right now. And I felt like I was having blood sugar issues. When you're like, don't eat for a while and you get kind of nauseous and lightheaded. I felt like that many times throughout the day, even if I was eating. And I was like, why am I constantly feeling this throughout the day? Why am I crashing at 2 p.m. every day? And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get curious. And I put a blood sugar monitor on. And so it just goes on the back of your arm. You wear it 24/7 for like 2 weeks at a time. And then you slap a new one on and start again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to see what eating different foods does for my body. I'm going to see if my symptoms correlate to my blood sugar. And what I saw blew my mind. Every symptom that I had in my body correlated to when my blood sugar would dip below normal levels. And so I finally could see, this is why I'm feeling the way that I am. And so I made a bunch of changes in my life. eating differently, taking different supplements, getting a lot more protein in, especially in breakfast. I used to hate breakfast. I love breakfast now. It's my favorite meal of the day. But I really had to change my lifestyle a lot. And so the blood sugar started to get better. And I was like, okay, it's working. But there were still crashes throughout the day. And I was like, why am I still crashing and getting these lightheaded feelings? And what I noticed was that smoking weed was the thing that crashed my blood sugar more than anything I did throughout the day. So if I didn't smoke all day long, I had perfect blood sugar, that it was just like a nice little roller coaster as I was eating, and it would come down afterwards. And then I would smoke at the end of the day before I went to bed, because I was like, you know what, I'm being better. I don't have to smoke in the mornings
It's your
anymore.
chill time.
Right before bed, the biggest spike of my blood sugar, and it would crash all the way down below. And that's when I would get lightheaded and nauseous again. And I was like, I'm doing this to myself.
Yeah.
I'm literally causing these symptoms in my body. And that was the aha moment that I needed to be like, I need to let this go. This isn't serving me anymore. And so I decided to finally stop. And when I stopped smoking, those symptoms went away, and I was able to finally regulate myself on a daily basis. And I never thought that the thing that I loved so much in my life was the thing that was causing me pain. But just like we talked about earlier with gymnastics, I loved gymnastics to my fucking core. It was my identity. Just like cannabis was, it was my identity. And I had to let go of that identity to stop sitting in the pain every single day. The self-harm that was causing me, I was doing it to myself every single day. And so I had to recognize that this wasn't just a pattern of smoking weed. This was a lifelong pattern that I was sitting in since childhood. Yeah. And I didn't realize that it was a form of self-harm. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just a spiritual or a healing practice to me anymore. It was a lack of self-worth, where I was okay with consciously harming myself every day. I knew when I smoked that it made me feel worse. It made me feel panicky. It made me feel more anxious. I knew it didn't feel good in my body anymore, but I was so addicted to the identity of who I was that I couldn't let it go. And so there was a lot of reflection that I had to do during this time period to release that identity and be like, this isn't who I am anymore. And I have to be okay with the unknown, stepping into the fear of the unknown of, I don't know who she is yet, but I have to be okay with waiting to find her and going on that journey to find her.
That's very interesting. And when you say that you knew you were harming your body.
Yeah.
And that was that proof, and that's really interesting, because nobody really talks about, how it affects your blood sugar.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense, especially if you eat a belly of gummies before you go to bed to, nighttime gummies, even because you're not trying to, get jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
You just want sleep. So you're like, I'm going to take a nighttime gummy and I'm going to crash out. And yeah, you do crash out, but throughout the night, that's affecting your blood sugar.
And your body is so intelligent. And
It is.
What I noticed is that weed wasn't calming my nervous system anymore like it used to, right? It used to help those symptoms. It used to calm my body. But what started to happen is, you start feeling panicky one time, and then you smoke a little bit more and you're like, oh, I just need a different strain. So you go get a different strain and you're like, oh, I still feel panicky and anxious. Your body starts learning that pattern, right? And it starts recognizing THC as something that's overstimulating your body now. And then it just starts to almost reject it, because your body is so intelligent. It recognizes that this isn't helping you anymore. It's triggering these negative symptoms, this cortisol dump, and it latches onto that chemical process in your body. So every time you smoke now, overstimulation, dump the cortisol, increase the blood sugar. It's this never-ending loop that you get stuck in when your body starts recognizing that this isn't helping you anymore. It's just overstimulating you.
I'm so thankful for you with all of this information and all the work you put into doing that, and really doing science on yourself, doing discovery on yourself, just research.
And this is where the pre-med comes back into play. You know what I mean? I didn't go to school for no reason. And if I didn't have this education and all of this knowledge about how the body works, I wouldn't have been able to connect these dots for myself. And so although I didn't use that as a career, it came back into my life right now. It's playing a purpose in my life right now. And if I can help somebody else alleviate these symptoms because they are recognizing the same pattern in their body. I can't tell you how many women have messaged me and they're like, I'm so grateful that I found you. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody is recognizing these patterns and speaking out on it. And I get a lot of hate, don't get me wrong. I get so many people in the cannabis community who are like, you have no right to talk about this. You're so wrong. There's no way this could happen. And although this is my story, it's not everybody's story, and that's okay as well. I don't have any hate towards the cannabis community. I have nothing but love for it and for the journey it's brought me in my lifetime.
For sure.
But that can't be my journey forever.
Well, and that's kind of like, I mean, from the cannabis community, like, oh, like, do a little better. It's so judgy. Like,
My favorite
can't
are
we
like,
just have an opinion anymore? I thought
Seriously.
that was it. That was the whole thing was, you do you,
Yeah.
you know? And information, like, who doesn't love, doesn't mean that it pertains to every single person.
Yeah.
But hey, if it's happening to me,
yeah.
statistics are showing that it's going to happen. There's a lot of people in this world. So,
And I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to diagnose you with insulin resistance or diabetes or anything like that. But I can help show you how to go get a glucose monitor and get curious about your own body. And once you get that data of your body, you can't unsee it.
No.
You can't unsee what you're doing to yourself. And then it becomes a decision that you have to make. How do I want to treat my body? And over the last year, I think that I've really fallen deeper into like faith and spirituality within myself because I've realized how important it is to treat your body as the temple of the God that it houses. And if you're not treating your temple with respect, your God isn't going to be respected either, you know? And so it's not just a physical practice, it's a spiritual practice to make these decisions and to find the love for your body to really treat it the way that it's asking you to.
yeah.
And this isn't for everybody. I'm not like, no hate to people who want to smoke every day. Do your thing, girl. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
If you want to smoke every day, you know, that's totally up to you. But if you're feeling these symptoms in your body and you're craving change, you're going to have that voice in the back of your head every time you take a hit. Why did I do that? This doesn't feel the same. And if you're having that voice in the back of your head, get curious about it. This is your time to listen to it.
Yeah, quit trying to mute it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's talking for a reason. We really do talk ourselves out of a lot of stuff that are, and it's almost automatic how we gaslight ourselves.
Yeah.
Literally.
Or give an excuse to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we don't want to blame ourselves. So we find an excuse for, oh, I need a different strain. Oh, I need a lower THC level. Oh, I need this terpene or that terpene. You know what I mean? There's always an excuse for how we need to modify the habit instead of letting go the habit. And so I think, you know, I gave excuses for about a year or two before I made the decision.
And everybody deserves that.
Yeah.
That time to make the excuses because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
You have to like learn it. It has to integrate in your brain. So you have to have that conflicting. You do have to like argue with yourself.
Sometimes you need that last hit to be really like, whoa, this is not for me.
This is not for me. Yeah.
And I had that one last experience. I ended up going on a hike with a friend, and I was already at the point where I was like, I really don't feel like smoking anymore. But the social aspect, when somebody hands you that joint and you're like, ooh, I know I want to smoke. And you take it. And then, so we got to the top of the hike, which is where we had lunch, we smoked, and she didn't tell me it was an infused joint. And I smoked it like normal. And I already have a pretty low tolerance for anything in my body. I do half the amount that everybody else does kind of thing. And I was borderline panic attack at the top of this mountain because I was so overwhelmed. I baby stepped down the entire mountain. Her and my dog were like 20 feet ahead of me. And I was just baby stepping, barely making it down this mountain. And it wasn't steep. It was like what we did today, basically. But I was so scared that I was going to trip and fall, that something bad was going to happen, that I was going to pass out. I had so much panic in my body. And that was the moment that I was like, I would have had a perfect day today if I didn't hit that joint. This would have been a perfect hike. And I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
See, and I think that's where people talk themselves out of it because we can do that with alcohol.
Yeah.
Because the hangover is all day long. But what the difference was is that you were able to go, if it hadn't been for this one thing, but usually we know it's alcohol. I'm hungover. I'm hungover for 2 days. Like we know what we were doing. But we think it's so, well, I got too high. I
Yeah.
got too high and
Yeah.
I just won't get too high next time.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't get too high next time for maybe 2 or 3 years and then it happens. But at some point, you do, when you are on that journey and you are starting to question, this is really for sober, curious, when you've had that thought in your mind,
And I love that you said sober curious. I actually hate the word sober. I
yeah,
hate the word
it is
sobriety.
a hard one. I
It
hear
feels
it a
like such a
lot.
limiting word. And I never want to limit myself like that. If I want to go smoke once at Thanksgiving with a friend, I'm going to do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I don't want to feel guilt or shame for that decision. And I feel like the word sober makes you feel guilty. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there, you can't touch alcohol or smoke again because the addiction is just so
Yeah,
strong.
for sure.
And for those people, like that word might suit their lifestyle a little bit better. I like to call myself sovereign.
Yeah, I do. I like the sovereign.
Yeah, I'm sovereign from substances. I'm self-reliant, whatever you feel like is best for you. But words are powerful, man.
If you're going to use, you're not using to regulate or cope.
Yeah.
You're using because you've made that conscious choice. Like, I'm going to have a shot of tequila.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to have a glass of champagne.
Yeah.
Like, you're
I'm gonna
making
enjoy
a
an
conscious
experience.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not using it to enhance. Like, the hike was enough of an experience. And
Yeah.
you were able to realize that later on in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't need that to make your hike better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was a point in time where, when we were on our hike this morning, I would have gone to the top of that mountain with you and looked down and been like, this is a perfect place to smoke a joint. That would have been my first thought when I got up there.
Yeah.
The first thought wouldn't have been how beautiful this is. It would have been, this is a perfect place to smoke. And when you're prioritizing the habit like that, you're not seeing life for what it is around you. You're not using gratitude a lot of the time in the way that you could be. And
it's a different kind of gratitude. It's a fuzzy, it's a like a hazy gratitude. You think you're having all this gratitude, but you're literally, it's not sticking.
Yeah.
It's like in that moment, but it's not being cemented like it does when you are sovereign. It cements in your mind and you do remember it for so much longer. And it doesn't mean that it's not as beautiful when you're high, but it's just it doesn't cement inside.
Yeah. I think there is a spiritual aspect to smoking still. I think it still does enhance certain experiences like that. But weed's not the same as it used to be,
We
And
were talking about that. It's not.
It really isn't. And I don't want to smoke a 30% strain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want that 8 to 12% that just gives you that little bit of connection to yourself a little bit more self-reflection. And, I wish it just went back to what it used to be.
Yeah. We could wish.
Yeah.
And that leads us into this next portion, and we're wrapping up, but mainly I found you for your scroll stopping 30-day challenge, EFT, emotional regulating. When I saw the words EFT, regulations, and 30-day quitting challenge, I was like, okay, I got to see more about. And then I just saw all the wealth of knowledge that you were offering. Your social media is just straight information. You could just scroll it and read and take notes and read them at night. And I mean, it's so. Let's get into that. So, how did you get into this 30-day challenge?
Yeah, so I never thought I would be a sobriety coach, a sovereignty coach. This was never my intended life path. And as a full-time artist, I got into EFT tapping myself, not only for regulating the panic attacks earlier in my life, but I also used it to help me manifest money, to grow in my business. It's a tool that I've used in so many aspects of my life. And so this past year in this healing journey, I got certified for EFT tapping myself just because I love it so much and I wanted to lead other people through it. And so I started doing nervous system regulation for artists, but it just never really caught on like I wanted it to. And I posted one day about stopping smoking and it just kind of took off. And I had so many people come to me saying that they're so grateful that I posted about it and that they've been thinking about doing that too. And then it was like, out of the woodworks, people I haven't talked to in 5, 10 years messaging me saying that they were inspired by my story. And then my mom coming to me and saying that I inspired her to stop smoking. And my dad coming to me saying that I inspired him to, clean up his life a little bit too. And I just, the butterfly effect of that one decision, I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. And at that point, I had felt so embodied in my own stopping practice and what I had been through in life that I was like, you know what, maybe I'll post about this again. And again, it took off. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll take all of these tools that I used for myself and that I've been teaching for these other things and translate it into helping other people stop smoking. And I mean, the messages from the women that are in my challenge, I mean, not only being able to stop smoking, but the butterfly effect in their families. I had a client get engaged in my 30-day challenge because her boyfriend was like, I think I might want to leave you if you can't clean up this habit. She cleaned up the habit and now they're engaged. And like, I can't even begin to explain like the gratitude that I feel for the people who have been able to transform their lives through this 30 days. And 30 days is really all you need to kick the habit because that's like the detox process of getting the THC out of your system. And there's so much fear and shame and guilt involved in this process of letting go that I wanted to take these EFT tappings that I had created for fear and shame and guilt of scaling your business as an artist, and I translated them into stopping smoking, and it's just caught on like wildfire. And women who are like, this has truly helped me release that fear of what life would be like without weed in my life. And so it's been really beautiful to guide people through this practice and how many people have successfully stopped smoking, and not just like a tolerance break. This isn't like, okay, I'm just gonna like let it go for a couple of weeks and see how I feel. Women who have said like after 15 years, 25 years, for the first time in their life, they finally feel like they've actually kicked the habit.
And they don't have to take that 30, 20 minutes to go outside or their 5 minutes in the morning with their coffee and then spraying and the teeth brushing and the, especially if you've got family and children, we're navigating this with the kids
like
around.
That routine to hide it.
The routine, the 15 to 20 years, because when you said that, I was like, I was a cigarette smoker for 23, 24, 25 years. And it was that routine that I got all this free time back. I was like, I don't have to sneak off and have a cigarette. I don't have to find a lighter. I don't have to find a cigarette. I don't have to go and wash my hands, brush my teeth, spray my hair, put on a new shirt every time I want a cigarette. And so I can imagine, I know how freeing that was to finally not need a cigarette, like wake up and have a coffee without my cigarette. I can imagine how freeing that was for pot.
And freedom is the word that everybody uses. They're like, I finally feel
because it's
free
even
again.
more taboo than cigarettes. I mean, cigarettes are already, again, if you're smoking, you're smoking.
But they're
and that's
legal,
for
so
you.
it's different.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. And so, now you're free from this very taboo thing and you can kind of gain control of your life. I told you about it. Once this month slows down and once I'm over this next vacation, I'm doing your challenge. What does it hurt? For me, that's how I look at things. It's a 30-day challenge. If I can't commit to something for 30 days, then I should probably really look further in.
And I wanted to make it such a small investment too. It's $33. I wanted it to be like, this is going to be less money than I'm going to spend on weed this month. So
way less.
So it's worth it, right?
Less,
and I don't want to overwhelm people with like hundreds of tools. I give you one thing a day for the 30 days. This is one thing to focus on. I don't want you to focus on the 10 other things that you're going to learn in the challenge. It's just one thing a day. You can do one thing a day, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. I was like, if you join, what do your 30 days kind of look like? You navigate. You've got an activity every day. You've got a prompt.
Yeah. So every day's different. I like to start with the emotional processing aspect of it to pinpoint the patterns. Although I know my pattern, your pattern might be a little bit different, right? And so really deep diving on those patterns is kind of how we get started. And then day 4 is when I give the first EFT tapping. And then every about 5 days, I give a new EFT tapping, and I do them in order of chakras. So starting with fear at the root chakra and working your way up to throat chakra, which is like finally speaking your truth. So once you let go of the fear and the shame and the guilt, you open your heart from like sadness or grief of maybe losing people, losing your lifestyle, losing that version, that identity of yourself that you used to have, you can finally speak your truth and step into this new version of yourself.
I love it. I'm very excited. I've been curious to cut back because I use it medically. I replaced pharmaceutical prescription drugs, and I was
Yeah.
able to, after decades of being
Yeah.
on them, I was able
Which is still a
to.
huge step
It's
up.
a huge step, and there's nothing wrong. Like I
Yeah.
was just telling my husband the other day, last week, everything was so. It's been so much for me. In my personal life. And I was telling him, I was like, I think I might need to go and get back on medication to get myself, because I can't cope very well.
Yeah.
But I'm too strong. I made it through that. And so
Yeah.
the next time I feel like that, I'll be able to go, no, Leslie, you needed to talk to someone about it, and then remind yourself what kind of badass bitch you are,
Yeah.
and just go for it. And I think I'm excited to do this challenge, because
Yeah.
it's something that it's not just like a new, oh, Marika's challenge popped up. I think it's been in my algorithm for a while. It's everywhere.
Your
It's in my
subconscious is asking
thoughts.
for something.
And here's my brain's going like hello, and I'm going, no, I think I'm gonna go this way first.
Yeah.
Wait, but this way looks kind of fun. And it does take that fear away of navigating it alone, because there is a lot of fear in doing things alone. And
Yeah.
we are so strong. I can do it by myself. I don't need
Yeah.
anybody. But if you have tools
And community.
and I don't have to raw dog it, which I hate doing,
Yeah.
then I think that it's worth a try. It's definitely to step into that new person, into that new who I am already.
Totally. And just like you said, this is a lonely process of quitting a lot of the time, because your community is so wrapped up in this habit as well a lot of the time that there's not many people in your life that may understand why you're doing what you're doing, especially if they're not experiencing the symptoms and that voice in the back of their head like you are. And so having people that are on the same journey as you just makes you feel a little less alone. It makes it a little easier to get through the uncomfortable first couple of weeks, because there's no way to get around the uncomfortable first couple of weeks. You are going to have to detox. You're going to have some sleepless nights. You're going to have to feel that restlessness as your body recalibrates. There's no way to not experience that in this transition. But I think that pain and uncomfortableness teaches you something about yourself, and it teaches you strength, and it teaches you where to look for what isn't working in your body right now and where you need to put a little bit more attention. So I encourage people to like really focus on that part of the detox and not want to hide it, but embrace it.
Feel it.
Really feel it and learn from it and let your body talk to you.
Yeah, because that's the only way
Yeah.
way it integrates.
Yeah.
It's like it has to get into the tissues of your system.
Yeah.
And if you even try to just suppress that, it's like it gets it can't. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
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 Well, that was my last question for anyone who's listening that hears themselves in your story. What advice do you have to give for them?
I think just listen to your body is the biggest piece of advice. If you have that voice in the back of your head that is saying this doesn't feel right anymore, to listen to it and to trust the process. And you don't have to do it alone. There's community out there for you. And just as scary it is to let go, it's even more beautiful on the other side when you experience that freedom. And so let the fear guide you and embrace the fear, because it's there for a reason.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marika, for coming on After the Anchor. I hope you had a good time. And I am super excited for all this information that we're going to be able to give to people, and the resource that you already have in place. So if this is something that you are looking at for yourself, you're curious about, I have a resource here for you that you don't have to be curious. You can reach out to Marika. And what is your Instagram page? We're going to make sure it's all in the notes and everything, but yeah.
Yeah, my Instagram's alive.inherbody, and all my resources are linked in my bio. So I have a 5-part intro email series that really deep dives into my results if you want to get curious about that as well. And yeah, my challenge is always available to you. I love talking to people. If you ever want to just message me, I respond to everybody. Like I genuinely,
does.
I genuinely am like here for you guys and like want to talk to you about your experiences and guide you through them. So don't feel shy.
Yeah. Well, with that, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and listening to After the Anchor podcast.